I'm so depressed. Here, keep this object carefully.
Ew.
Hi, I'm Vincent Van Gogh and I'm an artist. You're probably wondering what happened to make me cut off my own ear and give it to a prostitute. Well, I'll tell you. It all began in Zundert, Holland in the year 1852. Vincent Willem van Gogh was born to Anna and Theodorus van Gogh, though, to their dismay, he was born dead. Exactly 1 year later, on March 30, 1853, Anna and Theodorus, still in grief over the loss of their firstborn child, had a second son, who they also named Vincent Willem van Gogh. That's me! My mother taught me to draw and use watercolors and appreciate nature, though she never overcame her grief for the first Vincent and rejected me, which may have contributed to my depression. Seeing the grave with my name and birthday on it every time I walked through my village was horrible and reminded me that I could never be the Vincent my mother wanted me to be. At age 15, my family was struggling financially and I was forced to get a job. I worked for my uncle at an art dealer called Goupil & Company. Eventually I was transferred to Goupil's branch in London, but after my landlady's daughter rejected my marriage proposal, I became angry with people at work. I told customers the art was worthless and I told them not to buy it. Therefore I was fired. I returned home and decided to become a minister, but I refused to learn Latin. After all, the poor people don't speak Latin, so why should I learn a dead language? I instead volunteered to preach and care for the sick at a coal mine in Belgium, where I drew pictures of the miners and their families. But the church would not renew my contract there, so in 1880 I moved to Brussels to become an artist. I had no money, but my younger brother Theo, an art dealer, helped to support me. My time with the coal miners later influenced me to create artworks depicting peasants and laborers. The French artist Jean-Francois Millet was also a heavy influence on my depictions of the working class. My studies of the peasant's anatomy and lifestyle culminated in my painting, The Potato Eaters, which I completed in 1885. Alas, that painting, however, was a complete failure. The dark, dull color palettes I used were years out of date. I moved to Paris in 1886 to live with my brother Theo. There I exchanged my dark color palettes for more vibrant ones. I learned the techniques of Impressionism and Post-Impressionism, and I studied Japanese artwork. In Paris, I made friends with other artists, Paul Gauguin, Camille Pissarro, Claude Monet, and Émile Bernard. Paul and I moved to Arles in 1888, where I painted sunflowers to decorate the bedroom. While other Impressionists chose to paint only when the day was perfect, I worked hard and painted relentlessly. However, I was not well. I would find myself consuming my turpentine and lead paint. I suffered from epilepsy and delusions. You saw how I mutilated my own ear. I am afraid things did not get much better. Upon being released from the mental institution after the ear incident, I returned to Arles to find Gauguin leaving. This did not help the condition of my mental state. I admitted myself to an asylum, and my depression and other ailments often prevented me from creating more art. Yet I pushed myself to continue. I painted in the hospital gardens, and I created works such as the irises and the starry night. I eventually became a patient to Dr. Paul Gachet in Auvers. I continued painting there, but when my brother Theo came to me explaining that he was struggling financially, my depression reached an all-time low. On July 27, 1890, I left the house, Dr. Gachet thinking I went out to paint, but instead I shot myself in the chest with the intent to kill myself. 2 days later, on July 29, 1890, I died in my brother Theo's arms. I died with the genuine belief that I was a complete and utter failure. In my lifetime, I created hundreds of paintings, yet only sold one. Though people used my paintings to cover holes in fences and for target practice, I poured my heart into every one of them. With each stroke of thick paint, I left a piece of my soul on the canvas. In my paintings, I created intense rhythms and motions through the use of my short, repetitive brush strokes. For instance, in the starry night, these strokes create the swirling feeling and the twinkling light in the stars and sky. My use of bright, vivid colors in my later works similarly create feelings of passion and intensity. The critics of my time viewed my quick and short impasto brushstrokes as sloppy, and attested my style of painting to my mental instability. Today's critics rightly apply the expressive and formal theories of art criticism when critiquing my works, because my artwork not only functions for my own personal enjoyment and self-expression, but also my use of expressive brushstrokes and exaggerated color, which influenced future artists such as the Fauves and German expressionists. During my life, critics viewed my art as childish and as a sign of my craziness, when in reality, my art was an expression of myself. The little happiness I felt during my life was found as I made art. I used my severe pain and depression to portray the beauty in the world, and it wasn't until years after my death that people began to appreciate my art. As I said earlier, while I was alive, I only managed to sell one of my many paintings. However, in 1990, 100 years after my death, my painting, Portrait of Dr. Gachet, sold for over $82 million, and was at the time the most expensive painting in the world. I spent my life thinking I was a failure, but I turned out to be considered one of the greatest and most influential artists in history.